Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for bearing us of this opportunity in order to know your perspective of what's happening in Syria and the future of this country. First of all, I have one question. Now that the Astana talk nears, what do you seek and expect from this conference?
First of all, you're most welcome in Damascus.
Yeah,
I'm glad to speak to the Japanese audience for the first time during this war on Syria. We don't have expectations, let's say. We have hopes from Astana that is going to be a podium for talks between different Syrian parties regarding everything. But I think it's going to focus more at the very beginning. It's going to be the priority, as we see it, is about this ceasefire in different places in Syria in order to protect lives, to allow the humanitarian aid to reach different areas in Syria. It's not clear yet whether this meeting is going to be about any political dialogue, because it's not clear who's going to participate in it. So far, it's about talking between the government and the terrorist groups in order to make this fire and to allow those terrorist groups to join the reconciliations in Syria, which means giving up your armaments and having amnesty from the government. This is the only thing that we can expect in the meantime.
And do you accept the formation of transitional government to be discussed in this conference?
Anything that will be discussed should be based on the constitution, because it's not about the government and the opposition or the government and the terrorist group. It's about every Syrian citizen who has the right to define the future of Syria. So in our constitution, there's nothing called transitional government. You can have government, regular government that represents different parties and different political entities in Syria. This is our proposition. So yes, if anybody wants to join this government, this what we call it national unity government, this is viable for every party outside or inside Syria. And after that government, you can talk about, let's say, legislative elections or parliamentarian election. That would be followed by another government later, which is based on the results of the elections.
Thank you. My second question, new United States President Mr. Dr. Trump is going to be inauguration soon. What do you expect, Mr. Trump? And what kind of policy change do you expect from this?
As you know, he's one of a few American presidents that weren't in politics before. Most of the previous presidents, they used to have certain kind of political jobs or positions. This one is not. So if you read the different media, even the American media, they look at him as unpredictable because they knew little about his vision. The only thing that we have that we can base our judgment upon is his rhetoric during the campaign. And if you want to pick up things that we can say that it's good in those rhetorics, is our priority today, which is fighting the terrorism. And that's what he said, President Trump. He said that his priority is to fight ISIS. Of course, ISIS, one of the aspects of terrorism, one of the organizations. When you talk about ISIS, you have to talk about Al-Nusra, and you have so many Al-Qaeda affiliated groups now within Syria. But he meant by ISIS, I think, the terrorism. So I think this priority that he put is very important. So we expect and we hope that the next administration will be genuine in implementing this rhetoric regarding the terrorism and help not only Syria, because the terrorism today is not Syrian problem, it's a Middle Eastern and global problem. So we hope that they are genuine to forge a real and realistic alliance to fight the terrorists in the region, and that of course will include Syria first of all.
And I have read one interview in which you mentioned lobbyists in Washington D.C. They are disturbing the policy change. You think so?
It's very clear that the mainstream media, the different establishment, the different lobbies, this is one combination. One combination that they don't need to see any change because they have their own interests in the policy of the United States, in the destruction, the destructive policy of the United States that we've been seeing at least for the last nearly 17 years since George Bush came to power in 2000. We only see the United States launching a war directly or indirectly through proxies, and those different companies, lobbies, media, they have interest in this kind of problems. It could be financial interest in most of the cases. So it's very clear today that they are going to put obstacles and to impede any direction of the policy of the new president regarding either fighting terrorism or respecting the sovereignty of other countries, or even having détente around the world through the good relation with Russia or with any other great power, like China, for example.
My third question, in the course of the fight against so-called Islamic State, would you seek coordination with players like Turkey, Kurd, and United States?
First of all, if you want to be very transparent, ISIS was created under the supervision of the United States. Whether in Iraq in 2006, before it was ISIS, it was IS, Islamic State, only Islamic State. It was in Iraq, only, restricted to Iraq. Then when the conflict started in Syria, it became ISIS of Syria and Iraq. And later, Turkey sponsored this state because they used to use the Syrian oil field in order to export and to get money and to recruit more fighters. And Turkey was directly involved in this smuggling of oil with the involvement and complicity of Erdogan himself with ISIS. So we cannot expect to have genuine fight against ISIS by Turkey or the United States. And the recent and more stark example is the attack on Palmyra. Few weeks ago, when they could retake Palmyra under the supervision of the American, under the surveillance of the American drones. They came through the desert and they occupied Palmyra. Today, we are talking, and ISIS has been attacking Deir ez-Zor in the eastern part of Syria. And the Americans did nothing to stop ISIS. This is where the so-called International Alliance Against Terrorism has been working for more than 1 year and a half now. And they achieved nothing because they're not serious. For Turkey, Erdogan is Muslim Brotherhood. He's instinctively and innately sympathetic and linked and close and adhered to the ISIS and to Al-Qaeda because they have the same ideology. He cannot be away from them. He tried to do some maneuvers to show that he's against those terrorists, ISIS and Al-Nusra, but actually on daily basis he supports those organizations, and without his support they cannot survive.
Thank you. Next question. In Aleppo and elsewhere, your armed forces and Russian forces have been criticized for bombing residential area quarters and hospital from air. Would you say those human tragedy was inevitable to liberate Aleppo?
Actually, the one who accused Russia and Syria about the bombardment or committing crimes and so on are the same countries who supported the terrorists, starting from the United States, UK, France, Turkey, Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and other similar countries. those who supported the terrorists directly through the media, through the politics, and through sending armaments and money and every logistical support, have no right to cry for the Syrian citizen, because they are the reason why the Syrian civilians, innocent people, has been killed during the last 6 years. This is first. Second, our role as a government, by the constitution, by the law, and our moral obligation toward the Syrian people and the Syrian citizen is to liberate them from the terrorists. Is it possible? Would anyone accept that a government would see in any area, in any country, under the control of a terrorist, killing people and destroying everything and implementing their hateful ideology, the Wahhabi ideology, on the people, and expect the government to stand by and watch? Of course, if you want to talk about the casualty, every war has casualties. Every war is bad war. Every war is about blood and killing. Every war, any kind of war. You cannot talk about good war. This is self-evident. But if you have to resort to a war to fight terrorism, you will have casualties, unfortunately. We did our utmost not to have any casualties. But those who've been out crying, those civilians, did they present any shred of evidence about Syria killing civilians or Russia? The other question, how can a government morally kill its own people? And if we kill our own people, the civilians, how can we withstand 6 years as a government or as army or as president? This is not logical. This is not realistic. We are here because we have the public support. But at the end, as I said, there's always casualty, and we hope that we can really end this war as soon as possible. This is the only way that we can save Syrian bloods through.
Thanks. Next question. Your host has been suspected to be using bomb containing chlorine gas. Would you deny it?
Actually, you are talking about chemical weapons. Talking about chemical weapons means killing thousands of people in very short time. Something that hasn't happened in Syria since the beginning of the crisis. But the most important thing is that morally, as a government, you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't, as I just said, kill your own people. You wouldn't use mass destruction weapons against your own people. That's impossible. But third, which is more important, that in 2013 we signed on the treaty of the banning of chemical weapons, and we give up our arsenal of chemical weapons since 2013, and we don't have it anymore. But actually, the terrorists are the ones who used those kind of armaments the first time in 2013. And in the spring of 2013, we asked the United Nations to send delegation for investigations, and the American blocked our attempt because they knew that time that if the delegation came to Syria, it will find the concrete evidence that the terrorist has used chlorine gas against our soldiers.